welcome again to the Maximum Acceleration, Maximum Performance webinar series. As those of you who are new to this platform and program, we started this project back in early October of last year. Maximum Acceleration coaching team has been around for about 9 years, and our focus is on growing your business and helping you achieve the maximum possibilities of growth. So to help people and create an opportunity and learning environment where we bring a community of folks together on a regular basis to invest their time and energy in how to perfect their craft, we developed a high-quality training program that we've coined the Maximum Performance Webinar Series. So today's program is the next continuation in that series, and today's program is going to be heavily focused on presentation, performance, professional influence, how to captivate your audience and inspire others to take action. Our guest speaker for today's program is Mr. Rene Rodriguez, who's not a stranger to many of you, but for those of you who've not had the opportunity to hear or meet Rene, he has been the personal presentation coach for me and many of our coaching team, a thought leader and faculty with Loan Toolbox and Mortgage Success Source family of companies for many, many years. Was named one of the top 40 most influential people under 40 years old by National Mortgage Professional Magazine, all 4 years consecutively of its running, which is a major feat. I believe he's the only one to have done that. And I cannot think of a better person at how to help you craft your message. Those of you who heard me speak in 2005 or 2006, those of you who heard Derek Egerberg and Mike Smalley and Mark Madsen and some of the other great presenters that we've had on this program, if you had heard us back in 05 or 06 when we had just started getting into the training and development speaking profession in the early days, many of us struggled with we had a great message, great concepts, great content, but we didn't connect well. And Rene has been the mentor, guide, and coach to all of us, focusing on how to really perfect and refine how we communicate our message and how we get that message across. So I've asked Rene to join us today's webinar and really help you guys power up your presentation and your professional influence. So Rene, thank you for all the help you've given me and all of those greats that you guys have had, our audience has had the opportunity to experience over the weeks of this series. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you kind of take it and run with it. Teach us what you have to share today.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Now you're going to pass the screen over, correct?
Correct.
All right. I'll wait for that to come over. I want to welcome everybody today. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us here. I know that this is, especially with interest rates where they are at, it can be a stressful time to take away from work. And I just want to confirm, can everybody see my screen? Erik, is my screen visible?
Yep.
Perfect. So today's topic, professional influence, is really something that has been a point of study for me for close to 17 years. And it really was brought up to my attention when I was challenged with the question of what's the difference, what's the purpose of why we are up on stage, what is the purpose of why we present, why we're presenting value, what is the purpose of that? And the answer that I initially gave was something that was so far off of what really the purpose is of any time we're speaking, we're on a phone call, we're on a sales call. And I want to hopefully walk off today, if I can give you guys a vision, that today you will walk off with a sense of paranoia, with a sense of taking a look at your job, your role as a leader, your role as a sales professional, your role maybe even as a parent, as something completely different than you did prior to getting on this call. And so first of all, I like to begin with one of my favorite quotes, and it's Einstein's definition of insanity. I think we've all seen this before. He's just doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. And what's fascinating about this is that we've all heard it before, and we've heard it so often that it's almost a cliche. And I begin almost all my presentations with this quote for the purposes of really illustrating the fact that we know what this is saying, that if we want a different result, we've got to do something different. But yet it fails to address the fact that doing something different is something that we typically always resist. And so what I'm going to be showing you over the next 45 minutes here are things that are very, very different. These are things that may seem simple, may seem easy, but when it comes to their application, really can make or break the difference into why we're up on stage. Charlie Brown also had a great quote. He said that life is like a 10-speed bike. Most of us have gears that we've never even used. And I love this as well because as Erik mentioned, my background is in behavioral neuroscience, and so I've spent most of my career studying the brain, the research behind it, but more importantly, how does it apply to business? How does it apply to the sales process? How does it apply to strategic planning? And in today's topic, how does it apply to creating influence and presentation? And so what I'm going to be uncovering for you is that I really believe that everybody on this phone call has all the tools to be successful. And we use this word called GESTALT, and you may have heard the word GESTALT in the context of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And really what that means is, to me, is that you all right now, we all have the tools, all the elements here on this left side to be successful, to have the best presentation, to do the things that we have to do. But sometimes we haven't been able to find the way to put those together. And the gestalt, or that aha moment, is when we have all these pieces that maybe we didn't know what to do with, and then they come together to create something that is of value. And so the process, the science of influence, I mean, we've heard Cialdini. My course material is very, very different from that. We do use some of his elements, but we're really looking about how does it impede on or how does it affect our body language, micro expressions, things that we can take and implement instantly on a daily basis. So here's another example of a gestalt. You may have seen this example before, but I want you to take a look at a logo here. This is something that we've all looked at for a long time, and I really believe that the answers that we're looking for, we've had them in front of us all the time. So how many of you can see where the arrow is in the FedEx logo? I'll give you about 3 seconds to look. There's a good percentage of you that have seen it or can see it, or maybe just now are seeing it. And if you don't, here, I'll circle them for you. And now, of course, you can see them. Now here's what's fascinating about the Gestalt moment, is that maybe it was something you didn't see before, but once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So I'm going to blank my screen here for a minute, and I want you to try to erase the thought of that FedEx logo for a minute. Just pretend it's not there, and I want you to try not to see it when I put it back up there. And what happens? Of course, it pops right up, and that's all that we see. So part of this process of influence is really uncovering those things that have been in front of us all along, but yet maybe we even did them intuitively, but we never even knew why we did those. And so this was what I was shown when I was asked the question of why it is that we speak. And Emerson, I think, says it perfectly. He says, the aim of all public speaking is to move the listeners to take action of some kind, action they would not have taken in the absence of your words. Now take a moment to think about what he's saying here. The aim of all public speaking, it's not to entertain, it's not to make people feel good, it's not to say, man, hey, that was an amazing presentation. But he's saying here it's to move the listeners to take some kind of action. Now here's the coolest part. This is a specific action that they would not have taken in the absence of you speaking to them. To me, this sounds like the job of a sales professional, the job of a leader. And so at the end of the day, public speaking isn't just about being comfortable on stage. It's not just about being entertaining, being able to tell jokes. It is solely about, can you move your audience to take some kind of action that they would not have taken in the absence of your words. I want to let that resonate for a minute. And I also want to uncover some other pieces here, because I want to broaden our perspective of this concept of public speaking. So where is it that we public speak? Well, the real simple one is we're on stage. Now, not all of us have the aspiration to be on stage. This isn't just for those that want to be on stage. Most of us are in meetings. This is one of the biggest mistakes that leaders make, that salespeople make, is that in meetings, this is our chance to influence. If we're unsatisfied with our company or what it's doing, guess what? Changes within an organization happen in meetings. And if we're not able to influence in those meetings, guess what? We're going to stay with the same exact results we've always had. On a phone call, most of us have to make phone calls to book appointments with our clients. Those are definitely moments of public speaking influence. In hallways, when we pass people, this is a huge one. You pass the wrong person and you don't say hello, they're going to make an opinion of you. Or maybe you pass somebody and you overlook them, or you don't, or you pass them and you shake their hand as you look away just for a split second. That subtle mistake can make or break careers with the wrong people. We influence at networking events. People ask us all the time, so what is it you do? What's the answer? Do you have an influential answer? Company events, social gatherings, basically anywhere and any time we open our mouth or don't open our mouth, we have the opportunity to influence. So this is one of those pieces that I want it to really resonate. And I also want it to resonate very clearly in what we call the 6 money-making activities. This is the basic sales process. So I'm guessing everybody on this phone call is a salesperson. And in our sales process, we have 6 ways that we make money. We prospect. Perfect opportunity to influence, because we're trying to influence people to give us a lead. If we prospect and nobody gives us a business card, nobody's interested in doing business with us, guess what? We have failed at prospecting. Setting appointments. We have to, when we prospect, we get a lead, so we set appointments. We have to convince them and influence them to want to meet with us. So there's an opportunity for influence. Now, once they have said, yep, I'll meet with you, now we have to actually present value. This is the biggest opportunity to influence, because now we have an audience. Sometimes it's one-on-one, sometimes it's one-on-5, and if you really want to step up your game, it'd be 1-on-100 or 1-on-1,000. But really, what's the value that we're presenting? And of course, gaining commitment, another opportunity to influence. Are people going to say yes to the value that we presented to them? And of course, aftercare and follow-up. I know some people that are fantastic at this. Once people have said yes to us, what is this aftercare that they've been taken care of so well afterwards, that they are so thankful that they made a commitment to work with this person or this individual, that of course now that they get referrals. All of these activities are all opportunities to influence. Each one of those moments are those ones that we can do this. So not only is influence about speaking, but this is also about selling. Selling our product, selling our service. So I want to substitute, and this is sort of my precursor to moving away from the word the words public speaking and into the words influence. It's your number one task every day is to influence. I work with leaders all over the country, some parts of $100 billion companies and some parts of very small companies, and you'd be surprised at how long it actually takes for these people to really recognize that their number one task is to influence behavior and thinking. And so the sooner we grab onto this concept, the quicker we'll actually get the rest of these concepts as we move forward. So why is influence so important? Very simple. It's the single most important currency that any leader can possess. And I use the word leader a lot because I define a leader as anybody who influences anybody else. And so everybody on this phone, whether you're a parent, you're a sales professional, you're a manager, you're a leader, you are influencing somebody at some level. Now, sometimes we influence people not in the way that we really don't want to influence them. So we have to really start paying attention to this process of what is it that we're influencing. So we must be able to, number one, win others to our point of view. Very, very important piece. If we have innovative idea for our company, we have a new marketing plan, we have a new marketing idea, or maybe even we're trying to talk to a realtor or referral partner that, our point of view may be a little bit stronger, how are we going to win them to us? We got to convince others to take action, convince others to stay the course maybe to completion. If you've got a team of people and they're starting to doubt, how do you convince them to stay the course? You want to convince them to buy your product, service, or idea, refer you business, and sometimes, choose you over a competitor, but sometimes we just want someone to trust us with their clients and even just give us a chance. So all of these are opportunities that we get a chance to influence. I love this cartoon because this is how I've felt over the last 15, 17 years. And here it is, you have a leader that's about to go out into battle. And I look at all of us as sales professionals. We're going out to battle every day. It's a competitive world. Interest rates are fluctuating. People are out there. But sometimes we don't have the time to stop. And maybe there's some better tools out there. Here he says, I can't be bothered to see any crazy salespeople right now. I've got a battle to fight. And, of course, on the right side there, we've got a weapon that would, of course, dominate the battle. And so when we think about this, this is why I applaud every single person on this call right now, because you have all taken the time out of your business, out of your busy life, to say, hey, maybe there's an extra edge out there. Maybe there's something that I can have that would give me that competitive advantage over those that I compete against. So we do have a very short period of time, and the course that I do teach is a 3-day course. So I'm trying to encapsulate some very, very big concepts into this short 40, 45-minute presentation. And so I'll go into a little bit more detail of what that 3-day course looks like, and I think we've got some of the students that have been through that course. But when I do these courses, I don't like to take on a lot of people, 8 to 10 people max, because for these kinds of transformations, it requires a lot. We videotape people 4 different times sometimes, and we go through a lot of detail on these pieces. But the most important piece, and we always begin with this concept. So if we're up there influencing, if you're a salesperson, you basically want to motivate people to do something, and not the motivation, the rah-rah motivation, but we want to motivate people to take some kind of action. And so Aristotle was one of the first people to talk about and be the public speaker trainers, if you will, and really start talking about the value of public speaking. And he talks about 3 motivational appeals. These are the 3 areas that we need to appeal to motivate people to do something. And I'll give you the first one. The first one is ethos. Ethos basically is our credibility and trust. And so I'll give you an example. Would you take advice from somebody who is completely overweight on how to lose weight and be healthy? The answer is, of course not. And the reason is because he has no credibility. And in our world, as we say, he has no ethos. Carries no ethos. Ethos is by far the most important piece in this equation, in my opinion. We have to have the credibility. Now, the challenge is when we're brand new, some of you may be new in the business, and in your mind, you carry no ethos. I don't know about mortgages. I don't know about interest rates, or maybe I'm not good with the financial markets. Here's the good part. Ethos applies in many different areas. For somebody who's brand new, what we teach them is how to tell their own story. We teach them how to tell the story of the team that they work with. Because if they can teach their own story, if they can tell their own story of where they came from and how committed that they are, guess what? The credibility and trust, and when somebody tells their own story, nobody tells their own story better than they do. Because if it's told truly and authentically, ethos can go through the roof. You don't have to be in the business in 18, 20, 25 years to carry ethos. Ethos is built through credibility and trust, and that is done through authenticity, which I'll get into in a second. So then we got pathos. Pathos basically is emotions and imagination. What that means is that if a doctor tells you, hey, guess what? Doctor carries a lot of ethos. Doctor says, you know what? You need to lose weight and get on a diet or you're going to die. Now, that's coming from a very credible source. But the doctor, if they did not use any pathos, any emotional appeal, you may say, hey, doc, that's great information, but I'll do it later. Or let's say a great salesperson, one of the smartest in the financial markets out there, goes out and says, this is when you should lock a loan, this is what you need to be doing. And it all makes sense, logic, ethos, it makes sense because the person telling me, gosh, I should probably do that. But the pathos piece is what drives people over the edge to actually make a decision to do it now. Without pathos, there is no action. And the last one is the logos. Logos is very simple. It's the consistency and logic. So what this is saying is when we want to do something and we're presenting information, we're presenting value, we, number one, want to be credible. We want to carry the ethos, and ethos is done through the marketing, the way your business card is. I mean, the weight of your business card can carry ethos. If you've ever been handed a flimsy business card and you look at this thing and it's got the edges are torn and bent, the first thing you think is, gosh, who is this guy or who is this girl? Really what they did is they hurt their own ethos. So ethos is affected, again, in many different ways. And, of course, pathos is our ability to tell stories and tell the stories in a way that appeals emotionally to people to get them to make a decision. But afterwards, and after that emotion wears off, we have to have the logos and the logic behind why these kinds of things happen. And so one of the first things we focus on, and this becomes a big piece of the work that we do, is assessing, do we need to add more pathos? So let's learn storytelling. How about our ethos? Let's get our marketing in place. And sometimes we have people change their wardrobe. Sometimes the wardrobe completely affects their ethos in the environment that they're in. And so ethos, again, we have to look at it from many different perspectives. And, of course, the logic and the logos, we have to make sure that we're telling a good story that makes sense to people. So when we do those pieces, what we're really trying to do is create alignment. Alignment says we're going in this direction. And a lot of people are very clear on their business plan. They're clear on their presentation. And what they do most of the time is they work on their PowerPoint. Their PowerPoint creates a direction, a beginning and an end, and stories and things like that. But they forget that their presentation and their ability to influence has almost nothing to do with the PowerPoint. And they have body language and all sorts of other things where they're sending all of these other mixed messages, so there is no alignment in what's going on. And I'll give you an example just after the slide here. So they may be clear on their direction, but their body language, their sequencing, their tone of voice, their wardrobe, the slides that they choose to use, everything may be sending the wrong signal. And what ends up coming if they come across as not authentic or, in essence, fake. So the goal we try to do is get very clear on the direction, teach you the skills and how this is done, but also align all of the other elements that are underlying here so that your body language is speaking clearly, your tone of voice is in alignment, your wardrobe, everything fits and makes sense in the message you're trying to do, and that's when we get into authenticity. So I'm going to show you some screenshots here of one of my clients who's actually Miss Pennsylvania, and she was actually just a couple nights ago on the Miss USA pageant. A very different client that I'm used to. I'm used to working with corporate executives and CEOs, but I took this on because this was a fascinating case study on the realities of, you know, here's a pageant where, yes, you have to have the beauty and you have to have all, you know, the nightgowns and all that other stuff, but where people lose a pageant, and we saw it again happen with Miss Utah, is in the interview. And in that interview, can you tell the right story? Can you maintain the right authenticity in that moment where all eyes are watching you? And so this is Jessica Billings, and she's Miss Pennsylvania. And this was the final 3 questions of her piece. And what happened was we had trained for 6 months in getting her ready here. And the first 2 questions, she had so much nervousness going into it that you can see that they're right here. She's about to tell a story that's sad. But if you look at her face, nothing about that says sad. Her body language, her hands, nothing about this says sad. Second question, after he asked the question, you see no response, and if you can look closely there, you can see her cheeks are a little bit pursed and a little bit tight. You see the tension there. But what happens, and what we teach people is, and this is one of those pieces when you notice, is that the sequence of body reaction before we talk is one of the biggest proponents of authenticity. And because of the way the brain is structured, when we hear a question, we will physically respond to the question before we can intellectually respond. And when we don't physically respond, or if we physically respond after we intellectually respond, there's something that's out of order and it doesn't feel authentic. And so what you're seeing here, he asked this question and there's no response. And so what I'm going to show you in this next slide was a question that he had been asked, that he had asked her, a question we had rehearsed many times, but really a question that we had allowed her to explore and get in touch with. And this was a question of her first time going to prom. And if you notice, the question is in the middle of the question. She is already being affected. It's filling her with a sense of joy, and it's already an authentic response. She hasn't even answered the question yet, and her body is showing this. Now, she ended up winning the pageant based on this question. All the feedback came back was just the way that she was able to answer this question because she was allowed to actually be herself. These other slides, these other pieces, she was trying to be somebody that she wasn't, and she finally was able to let go and able to be herself. Now, what we do with this, and the reason why we like to videotape people is based on this quote, is unless you stop the crack, you will rebuild the wall. It's a great African proverb. And we're trying to figure out all of those little pieces that may be sending the wrong signals. And really at the end of the day, it comes back to a sense of how do I become more of who I am? How do I tell my own story and get away from what I maybe perceive the world is trying to get me to tell? And so the words that we use on this is how do I learn to express, not impress? How do I learn to express what it is that I believe, express what it is that I know and what I feel, instead of me trying to impress? And now the challenge is, of course, if we're ever presenting, inherently there's a push to want to impress people. But we want to move away from that sense of impression and move into expression. So that is one of the other pieces that we, before I introduce this next piece, I want to tell you a little bit about Bucky Fuller. Buckminster Fuller was one of the world's most famous engineers and inventors. And he has a very famous tombstone that says, "Call me Trim Tab." To me, it's one of the most fascinating stories. And those of you who have boats or fly planes, you know what a trim tab is. But I want to give you a different perspective on what a trim tab is. If you look at a big ocean liner, they have rudders that are 20 feet long or tall in the water, and there's no way that any one of us could move that rudder even if we tried. And this rudder it takes a lot of energy, a lot of gas, a lot of fuel to be able to move this rudder. But somebody was smart enough to create this thing called the trim tab, which is a much smaller rudder located very strategically on the big rudder that any one of us here could move. It's very easy. And because it's the strategic place that it's put, that movement of the rudder creates a pressure to pull the larger rudder effortlessly through the water. So you can move this monster ship in the company or yourself or your career through the water, which is the environment, or your marketplace, your strategies, which are the tough things to sometimes move. We like to teach these trim tabs, these very simple movements that create very, very, very big results. And so, storytelling, which we're going to get into in a second here, the ethos, pathos, logos, all of those different pieces are the elements that we like to call trim tabs. And so before we get to the end, I do want to share with you some of these secret weapons that we like to call them. And I call them secret weapons because they're so powerful and they're so overlooked in our work and what it is that we do. And the first one is the power of what we call framing. So now you see there's content in the middle. There's myself. I'm in a suit, and I've got a pretty typical frame around the outside. And so everything that we do, everything that we say is content, okay? Everything. And everything that we say to people, people put a frame around. So I'm going to show you the power of just a frame in a very visual example here. So here's me, and there's me again without a frame, and I'm just going to change the frame and take a feel for how that looks. Is it important? I mean, if this was, let's say this was on my website, this is the guy that, Erik Janeczko sends out the invite, so this is the guy that's going to be doing your presentation on how to be more influential. My guess is that you would make some assumptions around this. My guess is that it would have an impact on you as whether my ethos was, now you know the word ethos, whether it was good or bad. So I want to give you another example of how this works. We were doing some interviews with an executive, and the executive, we asked the question, what is one thing that you are very proud of? And this person said, well, I was one of my last years of school, I got straight A's. He was very sharp individual. I got straight A's, and it's one of those things that, was just a very important piece for me. We said, great. All right. So we asked the group of audience, we said, okay, because we're trying to, get a sense of how do we create authenticity in this power framing. And so we said, okay, so what frame did the audience put around it? We asked, and we said, we created an environment where we could be very safe. And of course, some people said, well, okay, here's an executive, he's already making a ton of money, no wonder, he got straight A's. Not only is he powerful, but he's also smart. Great. And so we went back, and I asked the executive, I said, so you could have chosen anything you wanted to say that you were proud of, but you said straight A's. And when I looked at your face, when somebody said, oh, here's somebody who's not only powerful and smart, I saw your whole body language change. What happened? Tell me, why did you choose this little story about getting straight A's? And you watch this executive tear up, trying to hold it back, and he looks at me and he says, Rene, growing up, I was told I was stupid my entire life. And unfortunately, as a kid, I began to believe that. When I got into high school, my last year of high school, my last year of college, I had to ask myself a question. Either I was going to believe that, or I was going to prove them wrong. And so I took my last year of school, and I gave it everything that I had, and I got straight A's. And let me tell you, it feels amazing to have proven them wrong. So now, you're probably thinking, and I'm hoping you're feeling, that those are two very different sounding stories. So what happened? Let me give you a little visual. The content was the same. I got straight A's. I got straight A's. The frame is what changed. Because the executive didn't put a frame around the first time, didn't tell the story about being a kid, the audience put whatever frame they felt like putting on it. Some people may have worked hard to get straight A's, and they put a frame that they could relate. Other people, maybe they couldn't get straight A's, and they put a frame of, well, this is another person that's not only powerful and they're smart. But now when they added the frame, now it changed everything. So let me give you a little visual. Big mistake that we make when people ask us questions, if I want you to see with this green area here, this is the here and now. This is the here and now. And people ask us a question, and they say, what is your biggest accomplishment? And then we're going to answer that question directly. We're going to say something like getting straight A's. What we teach is never to answer in the here and now. Do not start with the here and now. What we want to do is we want to start back in time and create a frame by which we want our here and now answer to be heard. So in the here and now, they said, what is your biggest accomplishment? They said, get straight A's. Didn't have a frame, so people are going to put a frame around it. The one that was more powerful was when they said, what's your biggest accomplishment? They went back and started with the frame, and they said, I grew up, when I grew up, I was told I was stupid my whole entire life. Now all of a sudden, this created a frame of somebody who had overcome enormous adversity to then prove this. And of course, we've all been kids. Maybe if we have kids, we can't imagine what would it like to be telling our kids that they're stupid. And all of a sudden now this individual now claimed the frame to be able to tell the story. And we're going to go into what this tie-down piece means here, but this is part of the methodology that we teach, is how do we frame things before we put the content into them to then tie it down to make it actually mean something to them. So that was our first piece, which is what we call framing. Of course, this is a half day of our course and a lot of practice that goes around it. But the biggest piece, the next piece that we talk about, our secret weapon, is what we call the art and the science of storytelling. Storytelling is, you've heard a little piece of it there, and it's part of the framing process. Stories create an amazing frame. Stories, reason why they're so powerful is that they've been around for 27,000 years. This is a picture of some of the first art drawings, if you will, found 27,000 years ago by the Neanderthals. It's something that is inherently built into our brain and into our DNA to be able to communicate things. Probably one of the most powerful ways to create an action when we're selling something, we're trying to influence people. In fact, Dr. Howard Gardner out of Harvard says that stories constitute the single most powerful weapon in a leader's arsenal. The single most powerful weapon in a leader's arsenal. And so think about that for a minute. If we do not learn how to tell stories, we are missing out on one of the most powerful tools to be able to influence. Now, it's not just about stories. There's more pieces about being able to tell that story, which we're going to go into. So we've all heard, the concept of death by PowerPoint, and this illustrates for me why storytelling is so important. But really, what it talks about is in PowerPoint we use bullet points typically, and I'm using bullet points here to be somewhat facetious here, but I want to make these come alive. But bullet points activate two areas: the Broca's area and Wernicke's area in the brain. These two areas here. When we see bullet points, these two areas light up when we look at SPECT scans. Now, what do those two areas do? Basically, they are our language processing parts of the brain. That's kind of cool. They process language, where we decode words into meaning. Kind of an important process. Here's the challenge. That's it. That is all that those two parts of the brain do. They decode words into meaning. They don't say, oh, here's what I should do about it. There's no emotional response that gets people to do. There's no pathos. It is purely a decoder. It says, this is what that means. This is what that means. And we go, okay, got it. I read it. Move on. There is no action. And so when we talk about the best PowerPoints are the ones that usually just have very powerful pictures accompanied with a story. And so very important piece to understand that. And I'll give you one more piece of this. So this is where we get into, and I was debating on even showing this because we're getting into sort of the deeper science of it. But really, storytelling, in essence, synchronizes us through what we call neural coupling. So I'm going to read this to you. It says, when we tell stories to others that have really helped us shape our thinking and way of life, we can have the same effect on them too. The brains of the person telling the story and listening to it can synchronize. So in essence, when we look at this, our brains, when we tell a story, activate parts of the brain in the other person, the listener's story, that are the same as ours. True rapport being built at this point. So when the woman spoke English, the volunteers understood her story, and their brains synchronized. When she had activity in her insula, an emotional region, brain region, the listeners did as well. When her frontal cortex lit up, so did theirs. By simply telling a story, the woman could plant ideas, thoughts, and emotions into the listener's brains. Think about the power of that. The power of just being able to tell a story to be able to affect people at that level. So the last secret weapon that we like to talk about are what we would call tie-downs. Tie-downs, really, in essence, are one of the biggest secrets. Tie-downs, I want you to think about for a minute. Imagine a joke without a punchline. It wouldn't be any good, would it? It's just a story and didn't make you laugh and you don't really know where it went. But how many times have you seen people tell stories and just say, isn't that amazing? Isn't that awesome? It's a feature without a benefit. It's like saying, you know, it comes with a lithium-ion battery. In our minds, we go, so what? What does that mean? So the tie-down really answers that question of what this means to you. What does this mean to you? Anything that we talk about, a story, a statistic, anything that we share should always be followed with a tie-down. This is why I told this to you. This is what it means to you. If I tell a story, and the reason, you've probably heard me do tie-downs now that you know what it means throughout this entire presentation. Tie-downs are those pieces that once you share it with them, you can make sure that people understand why it is that you shared with them. And typically, if a tie-down is done correctly, you have this feeling of aha, of this, oh, I get it now. Once you have that feeling of, oh my gosh, I get it, that means that somebody tied it down for you. And so what you come away with from our course, you'll ask some of our students, I think I've got a couple of them on here that we'll pull on here just for a second, is what we call the curse of the tie down. You'll see and you'll watch people present things and they don't tie things down, and it almost feels like a complete and total waste of time because people didn't make it mean anything to us. I love these posts that people put on Facebook and they say, you know, the Dow dropped X, Y, and Z. And I'm looking, okay, what the hell does that mean to me? And, you know, the Bernanke did this or this and that. Okay, great. The good ones will say, here's what happened in the marketplace, but what this means to you is this. And now we go, oh, I know how to act. Or we'll send out information to our clients who have no clue about the financial markets and the mortgage markets and bonds. But we say, here's what's going on, and we feel professional because we sound like we know what we're talking about. But to them, they don't have any idea what that means to them. So basically the key here is anytime you share a story, statistic, a piece of information, always follow it with these words. So what that means to you is this. And if you cannot answer that question, then you should not be sharing that piece of information. Very, very, very powerful tool. So in essence, I've given you a very short glimpse of what these tools are for influence, presentation, and the final piece, in essence, is how do you manage your stress level? This is the piece that will break things down. And I'm debating on writing a blog post on Miss Utah and somewhat of a defense of her because you look at what happened there, and people are saying that she's stupid and not smart. That's not the case. You know, I don't know her personally, but I guarantee you, and I've seen this enough, that she had so much stress in her brain, so much cortisol running that the parts of her brain that go to memory and thinking completely and totally shut down. Now, I don't know of anybody that hasn't been in that situation when they're looking at something and they go completely blank, and they can't remember. Now, you're going to be on TV in front of millions of people, being asked a question, being judged by so many people. That stuff can happen if you do not learn how to manage these butterflies. And so people will say, Rene, do the butterflies go away? Absolutely not. In fact, you know, a couple of weeks ago when we were on stage at Mastermind, a couple thousand people in the audience, I had butterflies, totally had butterflies, and I will always have them. But the thing that we teach is how do we get these butterflies to then fly in formation? Because these butterflies are the ones that will actually keep us sharp, the ones that will keep us on target, and the ones that will get the appropriate amount of stress there. So the butterflies won't ever go away, but we can teach them to fly in formation. There's specific methodologies to be able to do that. So now I want to make sure that Erik, because we're kind of getting towards the end here, but Erik, are you still there, Erik?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so I'm just going to. Do you want me to go into this last piece, or how do you want me to go into this last piece here for the actual workshop?
Okay, so a couple of things, guys. As we go through these programs, typically, as you know, we do typically do a Q&A session. If there's anybody who does have any specific questions, go ahead and post them in. There was one particular question in here, Rene, that you know, I'll just post it. Somebody was asking the question about, you know, what are some of the, it kind of ties to this last little piece. What are some of the basic strategies that you do to help presenters deal with that stress level? Because we've all experienced that anxiety, that frustration, that I know this is something personally that you helped me with tremendously. Was how do you calm those nerves and get the butterflies? Is there any quick tip that you could give us that would give some guidance to that?
Absolutely, and it's a combination of two things. One, you know, we definitely have to know our material, and when you know your material, it creates a sense of confidence. But you know, my guess is most of us are pretty good at understanding our content. What happens then is you have to understand scientifically and physiologically what's happening when we feel that way. Cortisol is the stress hormone, and when we get under a lot of stress, cortisol begins to secrete in our brain and begins to, if it goes to the right amount, it actually makes us, you know, sharper. It gives us the right kind of energy. You know, if we're about to go up to bat, it focuses us. But if it goes too far, it begins to tighten up our muscles, and actually we begin to stop breathing. Now, here's the big piece. When we stop breathing, our brains get less oxygen. When we get less oxygen, our brain thinks it's going to die. If our brain thinks it's going to die, it moves into fight, flight, freeze response, which shuts down the memory parts of our brain. So one of the biggest, most important pieces, and I cannot stress this enough, is to learn how to breathe. And so if you ever catch me, if you have me on Facebook, you'll see Kai caught me backstage before I went on there in my sort of meditative state prior to going up there, and it's really just about breathing. How do I get enough oxygen in there and get myself in a sense of a relaxed state, but yet alert state, to be able to do that? And if we want to, for those that, you know, I mean, I'm sure that I can provide people a link to a guided relaxation piece. If those, you know, want to, maybe they reach out to you, Eric, and we can provide them a link for that, because I do have a guided relaxation piece that we use. It's called progressive relaxation. The same methodology that's used with Olympic athletes, the Lakers and the Bulls, all uses the same exact methodology. But really, it's about creating a connection between our mind and our body. So where is it that we hold our stress? And when we can learn to manage that, it's amazing what happens, that we can really truly express what it is that we're really there to talk about.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I think we've got time for just a couple more quick questions here, Rene. The next question posted was, what do you do when your why of what shapes your purpose is so intense or borderline traumatic that it takes you way beyond the edge of your comfort zone?
Great question, because yeah, that is one of the pieces that we go into is when we want people to tap into their why, and a lot of times when they truly first time tap into their why, it becomes very emotional. And what happens is that we've been taught, you know, you don't cry in business, you don't get emotional in business, you don't do those types of things. So we basically shut off to it. And sometimes our whys are so valuable and so important to us. They were at such critical points of our life that they're very emotional to us. And what a lot of times in our initial sessions, you know, when I have one-on-one sessions with people, they'll cry and they'll say, I can't do this. I mean, I had an executive at $136 billion company crying his eyes out, and he says, what the heck, I can't do this. I said, yes, you can. Either you do this now or you're going to do this on stage. And the reason is that he's got to create a new neural connection to that part and that memory that is comforting, that is comfortable. The first time it's very uncomfortable and it's very overwhelming, so it's going to flood. But the more he revisits that experience, the more that you go back over that and you'll be able to tell that story, the more you'll be able to be more in control of it. I tell a story. I have several stories that I don't know if I'm going to choke up or not, because they are very important. It's one of my best friends who passed away, and the story of me telling the eulogy. It's a very important story to me. It's one that I tell usually in a business planning seminar at the end, when we really try to get it, because I really want to drive home the point of, you know, we don't know how fragile life is, and sometimes I'm emotional with it, you know, but I can guarantee I'm not as emotional as the first time I told it. And so it's one of those pieces that you have to be okay with the emotion of it. You have to recognize the power of emotion and the authenticity that also comes with it. But yes, it's one of those that you have to address it often, and before the actual presentation. So if you want, so you can create some comfort in that neural connection.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Rene, there's been a number of questions come through that are all about, okay, how do we get access to more, how do we get more detailed, how do we get some of the one-on-one or personal small group coaching that you've talked about. You know, I'm sure there's many of our, you know, close to 100 people on this webinar today that are asking that same question. Would you mind kind of telling us a little bit about how people can get access to this? When is the next time you're doing this course? What's going on? You know, I know you and I talked about behind the scenes a little bit of something, but would you mind sharing that?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about it here, but I took some screenshots of one of our last workshops, and here you'll see some recognized faces. Here's Mike Metz in the top left-hand corner. Mike, for the last 17 years, has been a radio show guy. He's probably made close to $1.5 million a year the last 17 years, and wanted to take his game to the next level. We got Mike Smalley, who's I think the #2 branch at Waterstone, but very, very, very successful. Had him there. We got Mark Mayfield, Sean Guerrero, Arjun. These are some people that have already extremely successful, but have realized, you know, that this is where they want to take their game. In fact, Michael Smalley is one of the only loan officers that has spoken at every single major mortgage event. You know, from the business plans to mastery to mastermind. You know, every single one of them, he's been asked to speak there. And one of the things we worked on with Michael was, you know, how do we move him from speaking? He spoke in the beginning right through his neck, and it made his voice sound different. So how do we move that speaking down to a little bit different place to create that sense of power there? But this course is a 3-day course that we do here in Minnesota. In fact, our next one's going to be here in Minnesota, and I like to limit it to, you know, 8 people. Sometimes we'll push it out to 10. but that allows us to really take the time with individuals that want to take their career to the next level and that really want to walk out as completely different presenters. So our next course is going to be August 1st through the 4th at Oak Ridge Conference Center. Thursday night, people arrive. We go to dinner. We do a very, very special dinner it's a meal that's used in a style of molecular gastronomy, but it's built around creating a metaphor for the entire 4 days. And if you ask people that have been through it, this is one of the most powerful pieces of the entire piece. So we got Friday and Saturday all-day sessions. We've got evening activities that we plan for that. And then Sunday is our final presentations. In this workshop, we actually videotape people 3 different times. And so they're getting very, very powerful feedback. You know, you're not in a workshop, with 20, 30, or 100 people. There's only going to be 8 to 10 people in this workshop. So the investment for this workshop is $3,750. It's just over $1,000 a day for the workshop. But Erik, I'll let you kind of explain the arm twisting that you got that you put on me here for this one.
Well, as our audience knows, I've gotten pretty good, and I think a lot of this is attributed to you, Rene. I get to use your own technique and technology against you in this case, that I'm pretty good at twisting people's arms and getting them to offer a special deal for our members and our audience. Obviously we're trying to make it leverageable and accessible. So Rene has actually agreed to offer the program for $29.97, so about a $700 discount on the investment. And the accessibility, by the way, the link I just posted in the chat section, so those of you that want to are seriously considering this, really want to take your business to the next level, you are welcome to go ahead and hop to that website, jump, and go ahead and grab it, take advantage of that. You'll, of course, want to use the discount code MAXACCEL, M-A-X-A-C-C-E-L, 1X, 2 C's, 1L, and that will adjust the registration page to give you the $700 discount, so you end up getting it for the $29.97. With that being said, guys, I can't tell you how much value Rene's coaching and guidance has had on me. I worked with Rene personally from middle of 2007 until late 2008, a little over a year that Rene and I spent one-on-one coaching together, and it just totally transformed my presentation style, my approach, and just so you know, by the way, guys, that was prompted by a fairly traumatic event. For more than 15 years, I'd been pursuing a career in public speaking, and a friend of mine basically told me, somebody I trusted and respected who was a well-known speaker in our industry, I won't name names, but he challenged me and basically hit me right between the eyes and said, I don't know if you ever have the talent to become a great speaker. And that was a passion that was seeded in me, in 1989 when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So I'd been pursuing that goal for many, many years, and it wasn't until that happened to me that it made it click, that I really needed to rethink how I was approaching the entire process of presenting. And one thing that Rene really helped me do through the work that we did together was to really totally transform how I approached the entire concept of presenting. Because I'd spent 10 years trying to fix the mechanics of how I present. Rene helped me fix the back end, what makes it work stuff. The mindset and the preparation and the focus on expressing, not impressing, because I couldn't do that. I couldn't become authentic or correct the ethos by trying to fix it mechanically, by playing with how I phrased things or what words I used or didn't use. And so, I don't know. I mean, that's incalculable how much value that has had to me with the relatively small investment that I made. I'm not saying I didn't spend several thousand, tens of thousands of dollars with Rene over those years. So the opportunity to work in a small group like this, to learn from your peers, and to be able to, I don't know how you put a price tag on the value of it, in all honesty.
And I know that we've got Sean Guerrero on. I'm going to just unmute him and just let him give a short, maybe, testimony of what his experience, what he was like. Sean, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can. Do you want to just, maybe just do a brief on who you are and what your experience was?
Yes, my name's Sean Guerrero. I am a sales manager for Guild Mortgage Company, and been in the business now for right about 9 years, getting ready to go on number 10 in a few months. So I've definitely seen the good, bad, and the ugly of the mortgage business. as far as my background. What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, as far as my background goes, I did attend several different mortgage seminars, but just found this one to be really rewarding. It's helped me out with achieving a lot of my goals. And being a sales manager, I'm sure for all of you out there who are sales managers or leading a team, you know that influence is one of the things that is very easily talked about, but not easily accomplished. And this took me to where I needed to be.
And you want to talk specifically about before and afterwards, how you were before and what you felt afterwards?
Yes. When I went in there, I think the biggest problem, or the largest challenge, I should say, that people have when going up there and speaking publicly or in front of a realtor is almost organizing your thoughts, getting a good idea of how to present it. You can have some of the best content in the world, but like Rene was talking about, if you don't have the proper frame, the proper structure, 9 times out of 10 you're going to fail. It doesn't matter how hard you prepared or how much content, unless you have the proper formula to put things through, it's going to be a challenge every time. And fortunately, after going through this event and being able to have the feedback from my peers, feedback of myself, and the video footage as well. I mean, I liken it a lot to studying game film as a professional athlete. Once I was able to do those things and really break down what I was doing, it was easy to rebuild and come across and have a very, very strong presentation by the end of the event.
Awesome. And I one time heard about about the investment being around $3,000. What we try to do is keep it around the price of the value of one loan. And one of the things that I always say to people is if they didn't get the value, if they didn't get the ROI that they're looking for, they don't have to pay me for it. And so I guarantee every bit of this work, which is also why we keep it to such a small audience. What was that like for you to have a smaller audience that way, or smaller attendance and being just in an intimate group?
Well, I've heard from various speakers that have spoken in front of thousands of people. It is so much more difficult to speak in front of 4 people than it is to speak in front of 4,000. And the reason why is you see all the eyeballs. You know those people. You go to dinner with those people. And what I loved about that was it was very, very candid feedback, but it was in a professional and respectful setting. I mean, all of us were going through the same thing, so we were able to really dissect what the other one was doing and help the other one get that leg up. And I'll tell you right now, I've had the privilege to speak at several different events now, and when I've spoken, I mean, you can just tell a stark contrast, and you can almost predict what the speakers are going to say or what they should be saying. You mentioned tie downs not too long ago, and you can tell who has practiced that, who's perfected that, and who could use some coaching to help get their speaking abilities to the next level. You can really, really tell those things.
Sean, I appreciate your time. I know we're coming to the end here. I'll offer this for those who are considering this. This isn't a typical investment of a couple $100s. This is a significant investment. Again, I'll remind you, it's right around the commission you should get around just one loan, which I will guarantee. But if any of these are questions, you want to talk about it, I will open up a short phone conversation for those who want to ask questions, go into a little bit more detail. Again, this is going to be for a small group. I've already got about 3 to 4 people outside of this that are committed to going, and so we do need to, if you are interested, make sure you at least sign up on the. Did I put the? I didn't even. Here we go. Here's the actual link. So you go to proinfluence213.eventbrite.com, and if you want to send me an email at Rene@Volentum.com, and Volentum's down here, definitely do so, and we can have a short conversation and go through any questions that you may have. So, Erik, I'll pass it off to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rene, for making that opportunity available. For those of you in our audience, we don't typically do a lot of stuff like this, but the practical reality is this is one of the most important investments you could make. As a coaching team, that's what we're all about. In fact, myself and a couple of the other coaches will likely be there. I know for 100% fact I will be there personally as well, and not by the way as a presenter. I'll be there as a participant, learning and perfecting and refining what I do as a presenter, because I'm always constantly looking for ways to sharpen my axe and refine my skill and ability. There's just a couple of quick things, by the way, guys, to follow up with. Our audience gets you keep it informed. Obviously this is one of our greatest opportunities to be able to connect with you guys on a regular basis and keep you informed of what's going on with Maximum Acceleration and the family and this community that we've created around these webinar events. So I just wanted to prompt you guys on what's coming up next. Next week in the series, Mastering First Impressions, the power of first impressions, the consultation is the focus. I'm going to be presenting on how to really dial in on the kind of information you share with your borrowers, how to present, profound concepts, similar, using a lot of the ideas and strategies that I learned from Rene along the way, talking about how to create high-impact consultations early in the process with clients that make a huge impact on your value to them, and really transforming it from a vendor to an advisor-based relationship and kind of leverage that gives you in the relationship. Also, if you guys are interested and serious about taking your business to the next level, and you'd like more information about the Maximum Acceleration Coaching Program, there is an opportunity to be able to take advantage of the next step in the coaching process. If you are serious about making an investment in your program and in the growth of your business, you're welcome to experience coaching through what we call our strategy session. It's a no-cost, no-obligation, one-on-one session with a coach where you'll get to be able to experience coaching, talk a little bit about the commitments on either side. We don't have a tremendous amount of them available because it is based on the limitations of our coaching team's schedules. There's only a handful of them a week. But if you are serious about taking your business to the next level and looking to invest in a brighter future for yourself, beyond the presentation skills that Rene, workshop that Rene has offered, if you want more information about the one-on-one coaching program, best way to take advantage of it is you can pop comments into the Q&A section of the webinar, or you can go ahead and jump on our website, mxlcoach.com/strategy, and take advantage of it. Also, we will be sending out follow-up messaging with some of the tools. Rene, there were a couple of questions in the Q&A, people asking for the progressive relaxation exercise tool that you had offered or mentioned. If you wouldn't mind, if you can send that over to me, I'll make sure we get it out to the whole audience here. Otherwise, the last thing, and I typically, if you guys have experience, close out these webinar programs with one final set of instructions. You've invested the time already to be a part of today's program. Don't let it fall wasted time. And what I mean by that is ideas are great, but ideas without action, do they really have any value to your business? Do they have any impact on what you're accomplishing? So we wouldn't be doing our job as coaches if we didn't challenge you to act on those ideas. And as Rene mentioned earlier, the quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson talking about the purpose of the presentation is to influence action. Well, guys, let me give you a pretty blunt example of that. I want you to take 5 minutes before you do anything else, before you answer your next email, before you pick up your next phone call. Take the time that you've invested and make sure you get some value out of it. So the first, these 4 questions will help you create an action plan immediately for what you're going to get out of today's program. First of all, what was most valuable to you? What was the one best idea? You'll have access to the recording. We'll send out the links. It does take a couple of hours to do the post-editing work and get it posted on YouTube and distributed out to us. Usually that takes about 48 hours for our team to get all that work done, so just be a little patient with us. We will get the links and the tools and resources out to you. But right now, before you leave this call, before you jump into your next business activity, decide what was the most valuable thing you heard from this program. First of all, what's the one best idea you want to implement immediately? Secondly, what action do you need to take to make it a part of your daily business? Maybe it's to grab the relaxation exercise tool from Rene. Maybe it's to think about those 6 money-making activities and figure out where the weak link is for you. Maybe it is to focus on expressing in your next presentation versus impressing and letting go of the results, doing what you know you need to do and preparing by getting yourself focused on your ethos and making sure it's in alignment. Whatever that is, decide what that next action is going to be. Third is set a specific target for completion. By when will you have that action implemented? And then the fourth, the kind of the golden nugget or secret sauce here is who will you ask to hold you accountable? If you don't have an accountability partner, it's the best asset you have as far as follow through. Think about the running buddy concept. You decide you want to start a jogging campaign to lose weight for a New Year's resolution. You do it the first couple of mornings, and you get to January 5th or 6th, and it's cold and nasty and wet outside, and you roll up over and go back to sleep because you just don't want to go through the fight of it. But let's say that you met a buddy in your neighborhood who you were talking about at the New Year's Eve party that you were going to start this jogging thing, and he says, that's a great idea. Let's do it together. So it's January 6th. It's cold. It's wet. It's nasty outside. You're sore and tired from having jogged the 5 previous days. But you get up anyway because you know your buddy's going to be on your doorstep at 5:30 to take you running. It's so much harder to break the promises we make to other people than it is to break the ones we make to ourselves. So find an accountability partner, somebody you can trust and rely on, who's going to hold you accountable. Tell them what you're going to do and ask them to follow up with you and hold your feet to the fire on getting it done on your timeline. Otherwise, guys, I want to thank you for investing your time in today's program. I want you to celebrate yourself for taking the energy and resource and initiative to put time and energy into the refinement of your craft. And if there's anything myself, Rene, or the rest of the team here at Maximum Acceleration can do for you, please do not hesitate to reach out to us and ask. Otherwise, if you'd like some additional tools and resources that are available to you as a guest of our audience, a member of our programming, you're welcome to go to mxlcoach.com/solution and download some cool tools and resources that will help you create a better action plan for yourself. Lastly, Rene, I want to give you, one final opportunity, final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience, anything else you'd like to do to encourage the folks that have joined us today?
No, I think we've said it all. I hope to see some of you there. And again, if you want to chat about this session, because I know it's a little bit bigger investment, send me an email at Rene, R-E-N-E, at Volentum.com.
All right, guys. Well, again, I appreciate